So welcome to How to Start a Home Garden with Gracefully Holistic. So I'm Grace Loney. I'm going to be leading you through this journey this morning on the 4 main principles of how to start your home garden. And I want to just start by saying I am actually not the green thumb in the family. I'm just merely obsessed with food. So Ted, my husband, has really been such a big part in developing not only this presentation, but in nurturing our garden over the past, this is our 6th year gardening. So, I'm just definitely more of the extrovert in the relationship. So, when I asked him to join today to co-present with me, I got the hard no. But trust me, Ted, just as much as I do, really hopes that you guys can take away some golden nuggets with you today and just feel really inspired to start your home garden. And we're both so happy that you're here today. So unfortunately, nothing worth having comes easy. So a garden is not a set it and forget it type of situation. So a lot of people, myself included, they get really excited when they're starting a garden. They get really excited planning it out and what veggies they're gonna plant and what they wanna have. And then they're building their raised beds. And then, most of the summer goes by and they never really revisit it again and expect that broccoli is just gonna magically happen by August, which is totally not the case. Gardening is, for me, I like to compare gardening to maintaining important relationships in our life. So if you don't give enough love and attention to those important relationships, then it can just become overgrown with weeds, right? Who would have thought that gardening would teach us so much about life? All right, so let's get into it. Our first key essential ingredient for a thriving garden is the sun. So this is the first thing that you're gonna assess when you're planning the location of your garden. So really what you wanna do is you wanna actually track the movement of your sun as it travels across your yard. And it's just giving you a clue of where the sunlight falls and at what time of day. So, a bright sunny spot at 6 a.m. might be shaded by your neighbor's fence by 10 a.m. So maybe that's not the ideal spot for vegetables if you're trying to grow full sun vegetables like tomatoes, right? So the best low tech way to do this is to just make an hourly chart. Fill up a cooler full of beer, your favorite drink, park it outside and just watch the sun. And every hour at the beginning and the end of the hour, just kind of note where there are shady spots, where there are sunny spots. And what you're gonna do is just add up the hours of sunlight in your kind of intended area where you want that garden to go. Maybe aesthetically you want the garden to go in a certain spot. So maybe you're kind of zeroing in on that area. Maybe you already have a garden built, so you're just kind of checking to see what that environment looks like in terms of sunlight. By tracking the sun, you're also going to notice the shading effects on your house, trees, fences, neighbors, sheds, any tall structure really is going to play a part in creating shade versus sunny times of the day. One thing to keep in mind is that most vegetables do well in full sun, especially in the Northeast. We have a pretty short growing season comparatively. Like if you were to live in North Carolina or Virginia, you've got a longer growing season, probably a little bit more sun. So you really do want to kind of optimize the amount of sunlight that those veggies are getting so that they can really, they're working super hard to produce those fruits and vegetables for us to eat. So a little bit more on sun requirements, and it's different for different vegetables. So you've got full sun, you've got partial sun, and then you've got full shade. So you really kind of want to have an idea of what types of veggies you want to plant and what you're actually interested in growing and eating. So full sun, that's typically characterized as 6 or more hours of sun each day. And those are going to be your semi-tropical plants like peppers and tomatoes. And then you've got partial sun or partial shade. So this is generally about 3 to 6 hours of sun. Partial sun plants are a little bit more tolerant to accompanying heat, whereas partial shade would actually prefer to be protected from the hotter afternoon sun. So when you're tracking the sun, you kind of want to notice too, you know, is it sunny in the morning and shady in the afternoon? So, you know, maybe you want some plants that like a little bit more of a cool environment in those areas, or maybe it's shady in the morning and really sunny in the afternoon. That's going to be that hot afternoon sun. So you really, you know, the sun is and temperature is kind of different depending on the time of day that it's shaded versus sunny. So just taking note of that too. And then full shade plants, you know, plants need a little bit of sun to, you know, generate the food for themselves, go through photosynthesis. You know, we all learned this in 6th grade biology. So full shade doesn't mean complete darkness. It just means less than 3 hours of sunlight per day. And I was kind of alluding to this in the last slide, but some plants keep it cool. So some plants do really well in cool environments. So this is great for us Northeast gardeners. So these are things like your leafy greens, cabbage, kale, arugula, spinach, and then as you get into the fall time too, you've got your winter squashes, carrots, and other root vegetables. So spring and fall is really an optimal time for those types of plants. And also your garden, you could plan your garden so that you plant the partial sun shady plants next to taller plants. So let's say, you know, you don't have any shaded areas available in your yard, but you still want to plant some of those cooler weather or shady leafy greens, which I highly recommend. You definitely incorporate some leafy greens in your garden plan. They're super easy to plant, and they're the most nourishing types of foods, the most nutrient dense types of foods you can put in your diet. So what you want to do is you can actually plant those shadier plants next to taller plants that like full sun. Like if you have a lattice of green beans climbing, you know, by July, those green beans are kind of filling in that lattice a little bit better. And then if you have your lettuce planted right next to the tall green beans, it's shading them from the sun. So you can be, you know, really creative with that design. And some plants like it hot. So a lot of plants, you know, maybe you have full sun in your backyard and you want to plant some of these semi-tropical plants like tomatoes and peppers, and you notice like, why aren't they growing? What's happening? What's wrong? A lot of plants actually need heat. They need actual heat to actively grow. So until temperatures aren't reliably above 50 degrees Fahrenheit day to day, those plants aren't going to be able to thrive and fully ripen. They need plenty of heat to do that. Also, one thing to note in terms of like your peppers and your full sun, those crops that need full sun and lots of heat, like melons and all that good stuff. Sometimes the tag when you buy the seedlings or the seed will say 55 days or 75 days. One thing to keep in mind as a Northeast gardener is our growing season, sometimes it just takes a lot longer. We don't have, like I said, as much heat as North Carolina, Virginia. Just be patient. You know, just because you're at 55 days doesn't mean you should harvest it. Just wait until it's fully ripened. It might take you a little bit longer, and that's okay. You know, when mapping out your sun and kind of knowing the heat and the weather pattern, that's how you're going to decide when to plant certain vegetables. So you want to have an idea, again, of what you want to plant, and then you're planting those at the appropriate time. So your cool weather stuff, spring and fall, and then your heat-loving stuff, probably starting in May, and then letting them fully ripen through the height of summer. This book, Vegetable Gardening in the Northeast, is a book that I own. I used this as a reference to create much of this presentation today. I highly recommend it. It's super easy to read, super helpful. It goes through everything, planning your garden from January to December. So it's really thorough and just an easy read. So I highly recommend this. It will give you charts, you know, like you see here, to kind of help you decide when and where to plant certain vegetables and what environment they like the best. All right. We are ready for the second secret ingredient, arguably the most important, soil. And it's not just dirt. There's a party going on down there. Soil is an ecosystem, and it provides a home for all sorts of insects and microorganisms that in turn will provide air and nutrients to the plants, for the plants to uptake. Nutrient poor soil is going to result in nutrient poor vegetables. And the reason why we eat vegetables is for their nutrient density, right? So we need to take care of our soil first and foremost before the vegetables can get the nutrients as well and then go into our body. So if we want to get those nutrients, we have to take care of the soil first. And one thing to mention here, building soil is an ongoing task and it's not a quick one. So, maybe, you built your raised beds and you put brand new, the best organic compost ever in there, and you think you've got perfect soil and you never need to, revisit it again. But actually, soil is constantly in transition, especially year over year. Rain can deplete soil, different chemicals that you're using. Even the plants will pull the nutrients from the soil to survive, which we'll go over in a little bit. So if you're growing plants year over year, you really need to continue to replenish that soil. And if you haven't tested your soil yet, this is the first thing you're gonna wanna do. A soil test will tell you everything that you need to know. So this is a really easy test just using a mason jar. You can look this up on Pinterest or Google on exactly how to do this, but essentially you'll scoop some of your soil in a mason jar, add some water, shake it up, and then let it sit on your countertop for a couple days. And then you'll kind of see the different proportions of the different types of minerals or composition of your soil, really. So there's really 3 different types of soil. There's sandy soil, which is pretty low in fertility, but it has good drainage. And then you have clay, which has very little circulation. It's very compact and dense, so it's hard for the roots to grow in and ground down and get any nutrients out of. But also clay becomes really brittle with heat. So in the height of summer, if you have a lot of clay in your soil, things can crack. So that's really not great for the plants as well. Loam is considered balanced soil, and that's what you're striving for. So what you can do once you've tested your soil and seeing what your composition is, you can start adding organic matter or decomposing plants and animals. This is your compost, right? And Ted was out there turning the garden a couple weeks ago and adding compost and manure, and we were joking that it was poopy time because our whole backyard just smelled like a farm. So get that poopy time going, get the decomposing plant animal matter in there. That's your compost, if you've heard that word before, compost. It's going to feed the organisms and the insects in the soil and just make the plant roots more permeable so they can take up more nutrients and water. Adding compost gives more substance to that sandy soil, and it also lightens clay. So you can't go wrong with adding the compost. So you can either compost at home. There's different designs. You can throw your vegetable scraps and eggs and coffee grinds in there. And turn it. So, that's kind of a class for a different day. We have our own compost in the backyard that we use, but we also supplement that with a couple bags from our local hardware store too. So you can, if you don't have a compost at home, you can always go buy this somewhere from a local farm, a hardware store, whatever. So next is pH. And in general, plants like pH between 6.2 and 7.0. So a little bit more of an acidic environment. You can buy home testing kits to test the pH of your soil. However, big caveat here, it's best to amend your pH soil in the fall. So if you didn't do that in the fall and you're gardening for the first time, don't worry about it. Just do your best this year and then try and remember it next fall to test your soil, and then you can use different products to help adjust that pH. Okay, so there are 3 essential nutrients in soil that you want to concern yourself with. And you just have to remember that plants, like us, are living things and they need to eat just like us. So plants will actually, like I said previously, pull nutrients from the soil as their food. So you can add plant food or fertilizer to amend the soil and provide the plants the nutrition that they need so that in turn they can provide good for us as well, right? So the big three when it comes to plant food is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And every bag of fertilizer comes labeled with the percentages of each, and it's always in the same order, N, P, K. Balanced fertilizers like a 5-5-4 is, fairly equal and good for general use. But you can also have your soil tested and see if you're deficient in any one of these minerals, and then use, one of these nutrients to make adjustments. And there's all different types of fertilizers with different compositions, organic fertilizers, natural ones that you can use to bring more balance and put nutrients back in the soil that seem to be a little bit depleted. So definitely take a look at that to make sure you have a nice balanced soil. And my big tip here is do follow the directions when it comes to adding fertilizers. More is not better. So just make sure you're doing the recommended amounts. I've definitely made some oopsies there. All right, a really quick note on garden design. We're not going to get too much into this, but you have a couple different options. A lot of people like the raised beds. So that's where you kind of build up walls on the side. You don't even need physical structures. Sometimes you can just build a mound of dirt, and that can be good too. Raised beds are pretty easy to maintain. And if you don't have good quality soil already in your backyard, you can just put good quality soil in there right from the get-go. And make sure when you're building your raised beds, just consider accessibility so that you'll be able to walk, between the rows, that you'll be able to reach over and do your weeding and do your harvesting. And if you're someone that can't bend over super well or it hurts, maybe you want to build your raised beds at hip height, and that might feel better for you. So you can kind of design this how you like. Some people get really creative with this. So sky's the limit. You can check Pinterest. I'm sure there's videos on YouTube on how to do this. So lots of resources out there. You can also just dig out a garden and, just my one tip here, if you have good soil and you're digging out a garden, or if you have raised beds, no matter what you have, you're going to want a fence. Especially if you're living in my area, if you're in upstate New York, which I know a lot of you are, deer are going to be a problem for you. You might think they are cute and cuddly and you love when they visit with their cute little fawns in your backyard, but they will destroy your garden and you're not going to be friends anymore. So just make sure you have at least a 6-foot fence kind of bordering around to deter any kind of pests and critters. If you're going to do something like blueberries or any kind of berries, you're also going to want to be mindful of birds. So just kind of do your research when it comes to pests that are attracted to your garden. But fences will keep out, a majority of ones that you will be concerned with, the rabbits and gophers and all that good stuff. All right. If you don't, last little note here. Let's say you only have room, you don't have a huge backyard. Maybe you have room for one small raised bed and you want to just do some herbs, or you want to do some kale, something that doesn't take up a lot of room. And then you still want to, have a bigger garden. There are options for you out there. There are many, many, many community gardens that can actually rent space and have more space to do some of the bigger veggies like cabbage and tomatoes and corn and whatever you want. In my area here, there is a organization called Capital Roots, and they just have a ton of local community gardens all over the place. So if you'd like to rent space, not only do you have access to their knowledge and expertise, but then you'll have more room too, which is kind of cool. So that's always an option for you, if having a garden in your backyard isn't really the best option. All right. Third ingredient for success is going to be your seed. So you've got your garden positioned, you've got your soil adjusted, you are ready to plant. So when it comes to seeds, always go local. Don't go to Home Depot and buy the seeds that are shipped in from China and Mexico. They may or may not work. right? You're dancing with the devil there a little bit. When you purchase seeds from a local farm or a co-op, you know those seeds have grown well in this climate and in this area. So it's guaranteed more success. Plus you have the added bonus of just supporting your local farmers, which is awesome. So I definitely encourage you, you know, if you have a farmer's market in your area or you have a local farm that's selling seeds or farm stand, that would be the best way to go. Just check to make sure, you know, if you're living in New York, the seeds came from New York, the label will always say on the back. Also, organic and heirloom seeds are the best. There's really not enough research right now on GMO and the effects on our body. And GMO is genetically modified organism. But I have read a few papers, you know, scientific papers looking at GMO and the process of genetically modifying these organisms and the effects on our body when we ingest those products. And a lot of the results are no bueno. So if you can afford it, I would always opt for organic. It's going to ensure that it's a non-GMO product. And that plant that the seed came from wasn't, you know, laden with pesticides and really nasty chemicals all over it. So you're really just getting back to the food the way that nature intended in its most natural form. So if you can afford it, I would highly suggest you go organic. And that goes for shopping for your vegetables in the grocery store too. And then we're gonna go into veggies that are easy to grow from seed, and then I'll share with you my dirty little secret of how I buy most of my things from seedling. So veggies that are easy to grow from seeds, these are gonna be your beans, so your pole beans that are gonna climb and, you know, generate those nice green beans for you in August, September. And then any root vegetables, so your beets, radishes, carrots, anything that's gonna grow down into the ground, super easy, and you're gonna wanna start those from seed. So it's kind of hard to buy those as seedlings, you know. And then any leafy greens, any dark leafy greens are gonna be super easy to grow from seed. Those pop right up. They do really well here in the Northeast, so things like kale, Swiss chard, any like lettuce, boll leaf, romaine, all of that good stuff is really easy to grow from seed. You've also got garlic, and garlic actually doesn't grow from a seed, it'll grow from a bulb, but those also do really well. And then veggies that I always buy from seedlings. So you see this picture, this is a seedling. So the seed is sprouted, it's already kind of started growing. I actually buy all of my herbs from seedling as well. Herbs can be difficult, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. I have cucumber and squash starred here. That's because I've read some blogs that say cucumber and squash are really easy to start from seed. That's cool. I've tried it. I didn't have much success. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, those are also, you know, something you're probably going to want to buy from seedling. If you have a greenhouse or you have a sunroom in your house, and you want to start your seeds earlier and try from seed, be my guest. You go for it. I'm not trying to hold you back. I have tried it in the past. I just don't have enough space in my house, nor do I have the patience or the expertise for it. You know, you need to have enough heat in there. You need to grow them. They become a little leggy. You need to know how to trim them back. You need to harden them off. So there's a lot of steps here to creating a good quality seedling. So I just kind of skip all that BS and I just go to my local farm and let the pros handle that. And then I start them here. Then I have just a higher percentage of success. Whereas if you're growing a seed, you put so much time and energy into that thing. And then if it just, you know, the plant flops over or it didn't harden off properly, or it just doesn't produce as much fruit as it could have, like there's just a lot of things that can go wrong from seed with some of these more complex crops. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you are an expert in this area, like I know a lot of people that do a lot of things from seed that are on my list here, and that's great, go for it. I'm just sharing with you my dirty little secret. All right, this picture is not meant to overwhelm you at all, but we do need to talk about your garden design and mapping out what you're gonna plant and, you know, how much space that's going to take up. Okay, so when mapping, just make sure you carefully measure your garden area so you know how much space you're working with. So some people, like this person, like to draw it out on a notebook. Some people will use Excel. Some people buy fancy software programs out there. So really whatever floats your boat and whatever is easiest for you to plan this out. The most important thing is to just not stuff all your vegetables in there. You know, when things are seeds and seedlings, they look really small and it's like, oh, I could fit like 2 more here and 2 more there. But when they reach full maturity, some veggies need a foot or more of space. And, you know, I will say I learned my lesson the hard way. The first year we did our garden, I went way too crazy. I was just so excited. I'm like, oh, we have a garden. I'm going to plant a million things. It's going to be great. And Ted told me, he was like, this is way too much. Like, you're going to ruin this garden. I'm like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And by July, it was a freaking jungle in there. Like, you could not even like move around. Some plants did well. A lot of plants were blocked by other plants, so they weren't getting sun. They were getting moldy. So it's just not a good situation. So you're going to be wasting, you know, a lot of your time and money if you overcrowd your garden like that. So just make sure you're leaving ample space. So you're reading the directions on the back of the seed packet. It will tell you how to space the different rows apart from each other and the different spacing of individual crops from one another. If you are buying from seedling and there's no directions that come with the seedling, it's just an easy Google search. You can just Google how far apart should I plant my tomatoes, and you'll get millions of blogs that will pop up with the same answer. So it's, you know, it's really good to plan this out. So that's why you want to know, you know, the square footage you're working with, what you'd like to plant, what the space requirements are for those plants. And my last tip around the garden planning is just be realistic. Like, what are you actually going to eat? There have been years where I just liked the idea of planting 10 tomato plants, but we put a lot of tomatoes to waste. You can can tomatoes, but we would just get busy and, you know, the tomatoes would just go bad. And so you want to be realistic of what you and your family are actually going to consume, and then kind of plan around that. So what I always do is I'll always plant what I know I'm going to eat and what I like to eat often. And then I'll always plant one ringer, or like a vegetable that I've never tried before, or like a variation of a vegetable I've never tried. So I'll share with you guys, this year I'm planting collard greens for the first time. I've only had collard greens at like a Southern restaurant, you know, like with the bacon and all that, but I've never planted it myself. And last year my ringer was rainbow chard, and it was absolutely delicious. It's got a sweetness to it, a sweetness and a bitterness. It's really balanced. It's great raw, it's great cooked. So that was really fun. I've never tried rainbow chard before that. So have fun with it, expand your palate a little bit every year. All right, you ready for the last one? Water. So this one's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Plants basically need water more than we do. They use it to access nutrients in the soil. They need it. They need lots of it to plump their fruits and their roots. One thing to note is that plants in a drought situation become stressed, and it makes them more susceptible to disease and pests. Really, really badly stressed plants will even go into survival mode, and they'll completely drop their flowers and their fruits and just stop growth altogether and just go into that survival mode of gotta stay alive. Those fruits and those flowers take a lot of energy from the plant. So it takes a lot of energy, water, sunlight, nutrients from the soil to produce these vegetables for us. So you don't want that to happen, for your plants to go into a really badly stressed survival mode. So all you want to do is just make sure your plants have plenty of water. We really don't have a huge problem with this living in the Northeast. We do get, you know, a decent amount of rainfall every year, but we do also go through periods of drought and dryness. So you really just want to make sure that you're regularly watering your plants when it's not raining. And if you know, have a vacation, a lot of people will take vacation in the summer. So if you're going away for a week or two, maybe, you know, you are getting the help from a neighbor or a family member to take care of your garden while you're away. What we do is we actually get an automatic sprinkler on a timer so that it's just gonna go every day while we're away, so that we don't have to worry about watering it while we're gone. So just some things to keep in mind with the garden. And this is the most important tip around watering. Do not water your plants midday. Do not do it. As tempting as it is, if it's like a super hot day, your plants look really thirsty, don't do it. You should only water your plants in the morning and in the evening. Watering your plants midday will cause the sun to evaporate the water off the leaves, and it could damage and burn the plants. So you don't want to do that. So just making sure it's during the softer sun hours in the morning and in the evening for your watering. All right. All right, we're to the end of it. I just have a couple quotes to share with you all. I have made so many mistakes over the years. You learn from those mistakes and you just continue to refine your process every year. So I really encourage you to just enjoy the journey and don't be too hard on yourself if you make one of these mistakes. Everybody does it. It's just a part of the learning process. So really just embracing that and being okay with that. And gardening is extremely meditative. It's just a whole new level of pride that you can take in your work, and really the connection of knowing where your food comes from and knowing that that food was taken with great care and love. That love goes right into your body and it just nourishes you on a whole nother level than if you were to go to the store and buy the same type of produce. It just, like, you're gonna notice it and it just becomes addicting. And you know, the whole process of gardening is way cheaper than therapy. I love this quote. We might think we are nurturing our garden, but of course it's our garden that's really nurturing us. So we're doing this for the food that we eat. And my meditation teacher will always use this quote: "It is in giving that we receive." So when we give the love and attention to our garden and make sure, you know, the soil is well cared for and our vegetables are well cared for and we're doing our weeding, we are going to reap the benefits ourselves when we go and eat them. So it's in giving that we receive. It's just such a beautiful lesson when it comes to gardening. And last, aside from the book that I recommended early on, there's so many great books out there that are resources for you. Aside from books, there's YouTube, there's Google, Pinterest, there's all kinds of things that you can use to help answer some of the questions as you are troubleshooting your garden over this season. All right, so to just wrap up, your next steps are going to be to map the sun. You'll then test your soil, add your compost and fertilizer. You're going to map out your garden and choose what seeds and seedlings you need to buy. You're going to make sure once those seeds and seedlings are in that you're watering those plants regularly. Make sure you're doing your weeding as well. And just have fun with it. Play, have pride in your work, be patient, and just enjoy that delicious food once it's ready. It's going to have a completely different, you're going to notice maybe you didn't like salad before, but you grow greens in your garden this year. Maybe you notice that there's a more of a sweetness. The greens are more delicate. They just taste better. Like your mind is going to be blown if you have that first tomato from your garden versus a tomato that sat on a truck, green, unripe for 2 weeks that came into your Hannaford. It's a completely different experience. So just enjoy it. And all right, here's my quick plug. This is what I do. So I'm an integrative nutrition health coach, and health coaching isn't just about the food that we eat. It's really about bringing balance into our life. So having a compassionate coach, someone who's in your corner that can just help you reach your health goals, can be a tremendous asset. So, you know, whether it's gardening or exercising more or meditating more and discovering a spiritual well-being, or just improving the relationships with yourself and your food and your friends and family, health coaches can really do it all to help you reach optimal wellness. And I'd love to work one-on-one with any one of you. If you really like this course and you learned a lot, please leave me a review on Facebook, Instagram. Make sure you tag me. I'd love to see the feedback. If you're not really a social media person or you're a little more shy, you can always just write me an email. Honest feedback is the best feedback. It's going to help me refine these presentations and grow and just make them more relevant and helpful for you all. And please, 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 if you are doing your garden this year, send me pictures, tag me in your pictures. I'd love to see it. It would just make me so happy.